I don't know why I do this to myself, but if you don't gamble on college football, don't start. But I'm watching Miami, Boston College, Iowa, Nebraska, TCU, Oklahoma. But the Iowa-Nebraska game, man. If you do gamble, you know what the over/under is, total points scored in the game. The over/under for this game was 24.5. It's the lowest over/under in college football gambling history. Never been a point total lower than 24.5. I took the over. I said, come on, a couple of touchdowns here and there. I took the over 24.5. Now, I might hit the bet. Well, the score is 10-7 at halftime. That's 17. 17 times 2 would be 34. So if the second half is like the first half of the over. But here's the thing. Iowa has had not one, but 2 field goals blocked. Let me turn the volume down on this TV before the YouTube police come and arrest me for copyright. Iowa has had 2 field goals blocked in this game. Do you have any idea how hard it is for any points at all to be scored in any Iowa game? Because Iowa's defense, of course, is really good, and their offense doesn't exist. So every single Iowa game, the score is like 15-13, 13-6, 10-8, weird stuff like that. It's just, so to have, and I'm not talking about 50-yard field goal attempts either. I'm talking about within 30 yards. Iowa's had not one but 2 field goals blocked in this game. So I guess I should be happy that there was 17 points scored in the first half of that game, because that's well on the way to going over the total of 24.5. But it should be 6 more points. It should be 20. It should be 23 to. What's the score? The score is 10-7. Yeah, the score is 10-7. The score should be 16-7. Whatever. God. Anyway, don't start gambling on football if you don't already. Miami's up big, and can Iowa and Nebraska borrow some points from this TCU Oklahoma game? The score of this thing, 42-13, and there's still 2 minutes to go in the second quarter. TCU's going to go for playing for a national championship last year to not even making a bowl game this year. Unbelievable. Can we do some predictions? Okay, good, great. Awesome. I was going to take Iowa plus 2.5. Can you see that there? See where it says Iowa plus 2.5. But I'm not making, I didn't make the video in time. That would have been a good bet, though. Iowa at Nebraska, I was going to take Iowa plus 2.5. Texas Tech at Texas tonight. Texas is favored by 12.5. I like a lot of favorites this week, and that's usually an indication that I'm going to get a lot of games wrong. But I like Texas to win by more than the 12.5. You know, they got the Big 12 title game coming up next week against probably Oklahoma State. There's still 2 or 3 teams tied for second, but it would take some weird stuff to happen for it not to be Oklahoma State that gets into that thing. But it's a home game for Texas. You know, Quinn Ewers should have a good game. I still hate that Texas lost Jonathan Brooks. He was a good player for them. They're running back, gone for the year. But Quinn Ewers and those wide receivers, and I trust the Texas defense enough against a Texas Tech team that's been very underwhelming this year. They've underachieved, in my opinion. I think Texas can win that game by 2 touchdowns. I'm going to take the Longhorns and lay the points. That game comes on tonight. Speaking of games to come on tonight, Oregon State on the road at Oregon, and Oregon's favored by 14. And again, I think Oregon can win by more than 14. This is a huge revenge situation for Oregon. Of course, this is a rivalry game, the Civil War game, an in-state rivalry played every single year. And Oregon State actually won this game last year. You remember Oregon got blown out first game of the year by Georgia, but then they won like 8 games in a row, and Bo Nix got hurt, and they struggled down the stretch. One of those games down the stretch that ended up losing was that Oregon State game. I definitely think they win the game. Oregon State had a tough, close, hard-fought, down-to-the-wire battle with Washington last week and came up short, 22-20. And I think that took something out of them. I mean, having to play Washington and Oregon in back-to-back weeks, it doesn't get much more difficult than that. And I think it catches up with Oregon State on the road tonight at Oregon. And I just trust Bo Nix more than I trust DJ Uiagalelei, the quarterback for Oregon State. He's had a decent year, my buddy Oogabadoogie, DJ Ukulele. But when it comes down to it, Oregon's just got more playmakers on the outside for Bo Nix to work with than DJ does. And Oregon State's got a good defense, but Oregon's just been on an absolute tear offensively. And I think at home that continues. So again, I'm going to take the favorite, Oregon, to win by more than the 14. Washington State on the road at Washington. Here's one where I will take the underdog. I will take Washington State plus the 16.5. Don't get excited, Alabama fans. I don't think Washington's going to lose. Alabama fans are rooting for like 9 different teams this weekend because, of course, they need Alabama to beat Auburn, didn't beat Georgia, which ain't happening. But even if that happens, they need teams to lose. They need Texas to lose or Florida State or Washington. They need one of these teams to lose. It's not going to happen. Bammer will be watching the playoffs again from home. But I like Washington State to keep it close with Washington. Washington's been underwhelming to me for the better part of the last 4 or 5 weeks. Washington State had a big win last week against Colorado. Now, Washington State's not a good team. They're next to last in the Pac-12. But again, a rivalry game, 16.5 points is a lot. And I just don't trust Washington right now. They just haven't looked good. I could get proven wrong here, but I'm going to take Washington State plus 16.5. I do think Washington loses. I mean, I do think Washington wins, but I think Washington State will keep it closer than the 16.5. North Carolina on the road at NC State. North Carolina is favored by 2.5. Again, Drake May, I'm going to take Drake May here. North Carolina's had a disappointing season, no doubt about it. They got housed by Clemson last week. And Drake May did not play well at all against that Clemson defense. I think he'll play much better against NC State, and I just think North Carolina's a better team. I'm going to take North Carolina. 2.5 points isn't very much, so I'll lay the 2.5. Virginia Tech on the road at Virginia. Virginia Tech, a surprisingly good team. I don't know. I don't know how good they are. Record-wise, though, Virginia Tech is ahead of the curve compared to where most people thought they would be heading into the season. Virginia, on the other hand, it's the whole you are who we thought you were deal. They're terrible. I'm going to take Virginia Tech on the road to win by more than 2.5. TCU at Oklahoma is also, it's too late for me to do the prediction, but I had Oklahoma minus 10. So I would have got that one right, too, because Oklahoma's up by 40 at halftime. But anyway, it's no point talking about that game. I missed the boat. Arizona on the road at Arizona State. Again, I like the favorite. 10.5 points. Arizona is favored. Arizona has had a remarkable turnaround from 1 win a couple of seasons ago to 9-3 if they can get a win today. Arizona State, on the other hand, still waddling around in its own self-pity. They're just horrible. I'm going to take Arizona to win by more than 10.5. And Colorado on the road at Utah. Utah favored by 22. This one's tough because Utah does not have a great offense. They struggle offensively. A ton of injuries, of course, including quarterback Cam Rising, who hasn't played all year, tight end issues, and that's normally their best offensive weapon. And I really consider taking Colorado. I've picked against Colorado every single week this year, and it's worked out well. I consider taking Colorado, but I'm not sure Shedeur Sanders is going to play. Deion's been non-committal this week about whether or not he will or won't play. He got injured and yanked from the game last week with numbness in his hand, and he's probably the most beat-up quarterback in all of college football. He's been sacked more than anybody else. If I knew for certain that Shedeur Sanders was going to play and was going to be healthy, I would probably take Colorado plus 22. I don't think Colorado's going to beat Utah. Utah's got a really good defense, and even with Shedeur Sanders, Colorado will struggle to move the ball. But I would take 22 points if I could get it, if I knew Shedeur Sanders was playing. I don't know that, so I'm going to take Utah and lay the 22. Notre Dame at Stanford. Stanford's a 26-point underdog. I'm not taking Notre Dame to beat anybody by 26. Sam Hartman finally had another good game a few weeks ago against Wake Forest. But look, outside of that, he's looked like crap other than playing service academies in the first month of the season. Stanford's not any better, but 26 points is just a ton of points. And Stanford's the home team. I'm going to take the tree, Stanford, and the 26 points, although I do think Notre Dame will win the game. And Ohio State versus Michigan, the game. And let me say something about that. Ohio State versus Michigan is not the biggest game of the year, every single year, no matter what. It's not. Ohio State Michigan fans think that it is. They want you to think that it is. It's not. It's the biggest game of the year, every single year for Ohio State fans and for Michigan fans. The rest of the college football world doesn't automatically just lay down and worship at the altar that is the game between Ohio State and Michigan. With that being said, this year, it's the biggest game in college football. You've got two top 5 teams, both undefeated. Unfortunately, both in the same division of the Big Ten. The loser's eliminated from the Big Ten championship game. And because of the way everything else is playing out in all the other conferences, this is not going to be a situation like last year where the loser of this game can somehow sneak into the playoffs. Not going to happen. Loser of this game, season over. Huge rivalry, bitter rivalry, and it's a playoff elimination game. It doesn't get any bigger than that. Or does it? Oh yeah, by the way, Michigan's head coach will not be at this game, serving the third of his 3-game suspension against this. For what? For cheating. Michigan got caught cheating. We all know that whole thing. I'm not going to get into it. That has nothing to do with my pick on the game. But Ryan Day has lost 2 in a row in this series. There is just so much around this game. This is the game this year. Ohio State and Michigan fans, you've got it right this year. This is the game. Playoff elimination game. The winner most likely goes on to the playoffs. Most likely wins the Big Ten. Loser, none of that stuff. And then you've got the whole Ryan Day's lost 2 years in a row deal. You've got the whole investigation into Michigan deal. You got Harbaugh not being on the sideline deal. It's just a lot going on. This is the game this year. Now, in the offseason, when I did my preseason predictions, I picked Michigan to win this game. Michigan's won 2 years in a row. It hasn't been particularly close. They had a ton coming back on both sides of the ball, and it was a home game for Michigan. That was enough in the preseason to make me go with Michigan. As the season started and we went through the first month or 2 of the season, Michigan looked like the most dominant team in college football. Now, their schedule was what it was. They didn't play anybody with a pulse or a heartbeat, but they absolutely blew out and dominated every single team they played the first couple of months of the season on both sides of the ball. And then the Penn State game happened, and then the Maryland game happened, and here we are. J.J. McCarthy has somehow forgot how to complete passes over the last 2 weeks. Didn't even attempt to pass in the second half against Penn State. And then last week against Maryland, he had by far his worst game of the season. Michigan's running backs are healthy in this game, which is something they didn't have last year. Michigan's got a good offensive line again. Top 5 defense again. In fact, both of these teams are top 5 defensively in almost every single category. It's the number 1 and the number 2 pass defense, which good luck to either team completing passes in this game. J.J. McCarthy and Kyle McCord are about as average as you will find across the country when it comes to quarterbacks. Neither one of them are terrible. I don't expect either one of them to throw 4 interceptions. Neither one of them is a game-changing or playmaking type of quarterback. Neither one. The best you can hope for in this game, if you're Michigan or Ohio State, is that your quarterback doesn't lose the game for you. It's the best you can hope, because neither one of these quarterbacks are winning this game. This is going to come down to running game. Travion Henderson is healthy for Ohio State and has looked amazing the last couple of weeks. Ohio State's defense has taken leaps forward from what it was last year. And I think the key to this game is going to be the obvious, I think. Who can control the lines of scrimmage? Who can run the ball? Who can stop the run? I truly think that's what this game is going to come down to. Ohio State does have better skill position players on the outside. There is no question about it. You talk about Marvin Harrison, Emeka Egbuka, Julian Fleming, the other ones, and then the tight end, Cade Stover. Michigan doesn't have any of that. This Wilson guy they talk about, again, he's average as a bowl of half-melted vanilla ice cream. But doesn't matter. I don't think either team has a quarterback that can throw against these two defenses. I don't. Now, Ohio State may make a few more plays through the air than Michigan because of those wide receivers, but I don't think it's going to be enough to decide the outcome of the game. I think this is going to come down to lines of scrimmage, running game, and defense. And I'm going to stick with Michigan. I would not bet $1 on this game. It's a 3.5-point spread. Michigan's favored by 3.5. You get about 3 points just for being the home team in the betting world. So Vegas is telling you they view these teams pretty much even. I do too. I wouldn't bet $1 on this game one way or the other. I would not be surprised if Michigan won. I would not be surprised if Ohio State won. No outcome would surprise me. But because I went with Michigan in the offseason, because Michigan has looked like the better team for most of the season, although that's not the case right now, Michigan has had probably its 2 worst games in the last 2 weeks, whereas Ohio State has played pretty good, I'll admit. But it's a home game for Michigan. I'm going to stick with my original pick and take Michigan. This isn't a shot at Ohio State. I hope you don't think this is trash talk or whatever. I don't think I've said one derogatory word about either team in this video. Describing the 2 quarterbacks here as average is not insulting or trash talk. It's the reality that both of these teams find themselves in, okay? McCord is not C.J. Stroud or Justin Fields or go on back through the list of quarterbacks you've had over the last 10 years. And J.J. McCarthy is not nearly as good as he looked against 100th ranked teams 2 months ago. He's not. We saw it against Penn State. We saw it against Maryland. Ground game, lines of scrimmage, and defense. I'm basically just going to take the home team here. If this game was in Columbus, I'd take Ohio State. I'm going to take Michigan to win a close one. I wouldn't bet $1 on it. Have a good morning.